Welcome back, everyone. Today we're going on a deep dive into a truly captivating piece of history,
We are.
a first-hand account of the Battle of the Little Bighorn.
As told by the Sioux warrior, Rain in the Face.
Exactly. So, right in the face. For those of us maybe who haven't encountered his name before, set the scene for us. Who was he?
He was a respected warrior known for his ferocity in battle.
Okay.
But you know what makes this account so special is that it's not a dry historical text.
Right.
It's a personal story. It's a glimpse into the past from someone who lived it.
Like a time capsule almost.
Exactly. And you know, it's interesting because Rain in the Face wasn't born into a leadership role. He had to earn his reputation.
That's a great point. It speaks to a certain drive and ambition, something I think our listeners can definitely connect with.
For sure.
Tell me more about his early life, though. How did he become the Rain in the Face we know from history?
Well, the way he got his name is actually pretty fascinating. Dr. Charles Eastman, or Ohaiza, was the one who recorded Rain in the Face's story.
Okay.
He gained Rain in the Face's trust by adhering to, traditional customs and respecting his storytelling process. Rain in the Face was very careful about how and when he shared his story.
So he was a strategic thinker, even then.
Absolutely. And that strategy really comes through in his origin story, too.
Yeah.
Imagine him as a young boy getting into a fight with an older Cheyenne boy.
Uh-huh.
Remember, at this time, the Sioux and Cheyenne were allies,
Right.
but their young men often tested each other's strength. It was almost a rite of passage.
Okay. I'm already picturing this. It's like something straight out of a movie.
It really is.
Hmm.
So these boys are fighting, and Rain in the Face, despite being younger, emerges victorious.
Okay.
But he's covered in blood and paint.
Wow.
Streaks running down his face where it's been washed away by, sweat and tears.
Okay.
And the Sioux boys, seeing this display of grit, start chanting, "His enemy is down and his face is spattered," as if with rain. Rain in the face.
Wow. What a moment. You could almost hear those chants echoing across the plains.
I know, it's incredible.
Yeah.
And that's just the beginning. This story really foreshadows his future as a warrior, the challenges he'll face, and the victories he'll achieve.
It definitely sets the stage for an epic life. So how does this fierce young warrior end up at the Battle of Little Bighorn? What's the broader context here?
Well, the Sioux and Cheyenne were facing increasing pressure from the U.S. government. Their land was being encroached upon, and they were resisting, trying to protect their way of life.
So there was already this tension, this feeling of being pushed to the brink.
Absolutely. But from Rain in the Face's perspective, they weren't anticipating a major battle at that exact moment. They had crossed from Tongue River to the Little Bighorn, believing that General Crook had retreated.
So Custer's arrival was a complete surprise.
A complete surprise. Rain in the Face describes being at a feast when the battle began.
Oh, wow.
Can you imagine? You're enjoying a meal with your people and suddenly chaos erupts.
It's a stark reminder of how quickly things can change,
Yeah.
how the course of history can shift in an instant.
Right. And for Rain in the Face, this wasn't just a historical event. It was his life, his story. And he tells it with a rawness and an immediacy that's truly captivating. He describes hearing the war cries and grabbing his weapons.
Oh, wow.
His gun, his bow, his quiver full of arrows,
Yeah.
and just racing to join the fight.
So he's thrust into this chaotic scene. What happens next?
Well, as he's heading down towards the ford to confront Reno's troops,
Okay.
he notices something
Yeah.
that I think really captures the spirit of this fight.
Okay.
He sees a young woman riding into battle
A woman. That's incredible.
alongside the men.
Wow.
Her name was Tashinamani, which translates to moving robe,
Okay.
and she was carrying her recently deceased brother's war staff.
Wow. So not only is she riding into battle, but she's carrying this symbol of her brother's legacy. What a powerful image.
It really is, and it speaks to the courage and determination of everyone fighting that day. Rain in the Face even remarks on how her presence inspires the warriors to fight even harder, to display even greater valor.
That's amazing. It makes you wonder about all the stories, all the acts of courage that might be lost to history because they weren't recorded.
Exactly, and it makes you appreciate the power of firsthand accounts like this one, where we get a glimpse into those individual experiences.
Absolutely. So Rain in the Face is in the thick of it, alongside this incredible female warrior, the battle raging around them. Did he ever actually see Sitting Bull during the fight?
He mentions that he didn't personally see Sitting Bull during the initial attack on Reno's troops,
Okay.
which was, a few miles away from where Custer ended up.
Right, right.
But he learned later that Sitting Bull did join the fight against Custer,
Okay.
though not in that first wave of warriors.
Got it. So let's talk about Custer's last stand. What does Rain in the Face's account tell us about that infamous encounter?
He describes a chaotic scene with warriors attacking Custer's troops from all sides,
Huh.
some circling, others charging directly through the ranks.
It sounds like a whirlwind of movement and strategy.
It was. And in the middle of this chaos, Rain in the Face observes something that I think challenges the way we often think about this battle. He talks about the bravery of the soldiers, even when facing certain defeat.
He acknowledges their courage.
Yes, he does. He describes how, despite being overwhelmed and outnumbered, they continued to fight with incredible courage.
That's a powerful observation.
Right.
It reminds us that there was bravery on both sides of this conflict.
Exactly. And it humanizes the soldiers. They weren't just, faceless enemies.
Right.
They were individuals fighting for what they believed in, just like the Sioux and Cheyenne warriors.
Of course, the big question everyone wants answered is, what about Custer's death? Does Rain in the Face provide any insight into that mystery?
He does, and it might surprise you. He actually denies killing Custer.
He denies it.
Yes. He says that the battle was so intense, so confusing, that it would have been impossible to know for sure who struck the fatal blow.
So if he didn't kill Custer, who did?
Well, Rain in the Face recounts a story about a young warrior armed only with a war staff who charged through the ranks and knocked Custer down early in the fight.
Okay.
But this young warrior was likely killed in the fighting shortly after.
So because he didn't survive to tell his story, the true identity of Custer's killer remains unknown.
That's right. And this is where the concept of counting coups comes in.
Counting coups.
It's a practice among many Plains Indian tribes where warriors earn prestige not necessarily by killing an enemy,
Okay.
but by touching them
Okay.
with a coup stick or a hand during battle.
So it's about demonstrating bravery and skill rather than just taking a life.
Exactly. And because of this practice, the focus wasn't always on who delivered the killing blow.
Right.
It was about the acts of courage and daring throughout the battle.
I see.
So the exact identity of Custer's killer might not have been as important to the warriors as it is to us today.
That's fascinating. It really sheds light on a different set of values, a different way of thinking about warfare.
Right. And it highlights how Rain in the Face's account challenges some of our preconceived notions about the battle and about Native American culture in general.
Absolutely. His perspective definitely broadens our understanding. Speaking of challenging preconceived notions, there are those stories about mutilation after the battle. Did Rain in the Face address those accusations?
He did. He vehemently denied any involvement in such acts, stating that the excitement of battle was so intense that warriors barely recognized their closest friends, let alone specific enemies.
So he's saying it would have been impossible to single out someone like Tom Custer, the general's brother, in that chaos.
Exactly. And he specifically states that any acts of mutilation, if they occurred, were carried out by elders, not the young warriors who were focused on gathering spoils of war and chasing horses.
So he draws a clear distinction there. It wasn't something the warriors were engaged in.
That's what he says. And it's important to note that this is his perspective, his experience.
Of course, yeah.
It doesn't necessarily invalidate other accounts or experiences, but it does add another layer of nuance to the narrative.
It sounds like there's a lot we still don't fully understand about what happened in the aftermath of the battle.
That's true. And that uncertainty just makes Rain in the Face's account all the more valuable.
Yeah.
It gives us a glimpse into a perspective that's often overlooked in the traditional narratives.
Speaking of those traditional narratives, Rain in the Face's account also sheds light on some of the myths that have sprung up around the battle. Like the story of appearing elk and Custer's sword.
Oh, right. Appearing elk claimed to have killed Custer and taken his sword as a trophy?
Exactly.
But
But Rain in the Face debunks that myth, doesn't he?
He does. He explains that after the battle, there was this, scramble for plunder,
Yeah.
with young men chasing horses and elders gathering spoils of war. If anyone took items from the fallen soldiers, it was likely during that chaotic aftermath.
So it wasn't this clear-cut act of a warrior taking a trophy from his slain enemy.
According to Rain in the Face, no. And he even points out that if appearing elk had killed Custer, he would have claimed the honor immediately after the battle,
Right.
not, years later.
It seems like the story might have become distorted over time.
Right.
It's a reminder that history is often a collection of competing narratives.
Yeah.
It's about trying to piece together those different perspectives to get a more complete picture.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to go back to primary sources like Rain in the Face's account
Yeah.
to hear the story from someone who was actually there, experiencing those events firsthand.
So, if appearing elk didn't kill Custer and Rain in the Face says he didn't, who did? Will we ever know for sure?
That's a question that has fascinated historians for generations. And Rain in the Face's account doesn't offer a definitive answer. Instead, it reinforces the fact that the battle was incredibly chaotic. With warriors charging from all directions, gunfire filling the air, it's easy to see how the identity of Custer's killer could be lost to history.
It's almost like a historical puzzle with a missing piece.
It is. And that mystery is part of what makes the Battle of Little Bighorn so captivating.
But beyond the mystery, Rain in the Face's account also gives us a deeper understanding of who he was as a person.
Yeah.
What about his life after the battle?
He talks about surrendering to the Great Father,
Yeah.
meaning the U.S. government, and living peacefully on the reservation.
Right.
He emphasizes that he never broke the rules of the reservation.
So he adapted to this new way of life. But I imagine it wasn't easy.
No, it wasn't. He reflects on how a part of him died when he put down his weapons.
What a poignant thought. It speaks to the profound changes that were happening in the lives of Native Americans during that time.
It does. And it makes you think about the lasting impact of this battle, not just on the individuals who fought, but on the entire culture and way of life of the Sioux and Cheyenne people.
It's a reminder that history isn't just about dates and battles.
Right.
It's about the human stories, the individual lives caught in the crossfire of those events.
Absolutely. And Rain in the Face's story is a powerful example of that. It challenges us to look beyond the traditional narratives, to seek out diverse perspectives, and to consider the human cost of conflict.
It certainly has given us a lot to think about. As we wrap up our deep dive into Rain in the Face's account, I'm struck by how much we can learn from a single voice from the past. What would you say is the biggest takeaway from this deep dive?
I think the biggest takeaway is the importance of understanding history from multiple perspectives. Rain in the Face's account gives us a glimpse into the battle from the Sioux point of view,
Yeah.
a perspective that's often overlooked or marginalized in traditional accounts.
Right.
It reminds us that there's always more to the story than what we might initially learn.
And that those different perspectives can challenge our assumptions and enrich our understanding of the past.
Exactly. It's a reminder to always question the narratives we've been told and to seek out diverse voices and perspectives.
I think Rain in the Face would appreciate that. Thank you for guiding us through this incredible story.
It's been my pleasure.
And to our listeners, we hope this deep dive has sparked your curiosity about the Battle of Little Bighorn and the complexities of history itself. Remember, history is a tapestry woven from countless individual stories, each one adding a unique thread to the larger narrative. Keep exploring those stories, keep questioning, and keep learning.